Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This is a relatively quick video about this little beauty that opened during yesterday and again this morning. This is Dendrobium harveyanum, named after a guy called Enoch Harvey. It's all in the name, you know. And he was the first guy to get this to flower in Europe. However, in the wild, this plant is incredibly rare and is very, very rarely found anymore. Probably the few that were around have probably been collected in the past. Comes from places like Burma, Thailand, Vietnam and the Yunnan province in South China, and tends to grow at elevations above 1100 metres, so relatively high up. It's a classic monsoon sort of forest dendrobium. In other words, it gets quite dull but very wet springs and summers, that's where the growth takes place, and it pushes on and chucks out its new roots and gets a good grip for the winter months that are coming. Then when the autumn and the winter comes, it gets quite a bit more light as the clouds clear, and basically the night temperatures start to drop, and this is where we get the condition of a cool winter rest that we apply in cultivation. I'm a bit naughty with the cool winter rests because it's very difficult for me to be cool. I can do bright light by sticking them up in the roof, but that does tend to be the warmest place. And obviously it affects the flowering because this one hasn't flowered at all as a consequence. Anyway, this is the first spike to come out for me, first time it's flowered. I've had it less than a year, so this is the first chance it's had. I'll just zoom in a little bit on the flower because they are quite unusual. I won't say unique because I haven't got that knowledge, but it's very rare to get a complete set of 3 frilly petals, i.e. the lip and the 2 standard petals. A pretty little plant, nice canary yellow, slightly deeper yellow in the throat. Very nice little plant. I'm really pleased with this coming out in flower to such an extent. Okay. As I don't do a proper winter rest, the new canes are actually growing on through the winter. You can see the lighter colours in there. Good new healthy canes coming on, not having to wait for the spring for them to start. So they'll be bigger and stronger by the end of this year, ready for flowering next year. It's got another spike coming on there to follow on. It's got another little one at the top on the end of that cane, and it's got another one on the end of that cane. So 4 flower spikes that I can see so far, including the one that's just opened. Nice little plant. Typical epiphyte, grows on larger branches and on trunks, probably mixes in with ferns and mosses and other things like that. Apparently it does well mounted. I've currently got it in a pot because I've only just found out it does well mounted, but it's certainly going to stay in its pot at least until it's finished flowering, and then I may actually decide to mount it, but it's rather a large plant to actually stick on a mount. It's probably just too big, basically. It's going to have to stay in its pot. It was repotted when I got it. It's got a good set of roots on it, not too bad at all. Some of those are older ones, some of those are new ones. Many of those roots are active. They've got growing green tips, and again, if I'd given that a winter rest, those roots would have sealed off basically and had to wait for better weather. And as often is the case in dendrobiums, at the base of that flower spike, it's decided to throw some roots out. Now they just do that sometimes, and I actually believe that's a natural trait, and it may be triggered by a particular cane actually touching against somewhere where it can actually get a hold and the possibility of starting a new plant. That's my theory, not knowledge. Take that as you will. Okay, just a short video about Dendrobium harveyanum. A pretty plant. I'm quite pleased with this one. I thought I'd tag this one on the end of the Dendrobium harveyanum video because this spike also opened yesterday. This is a type of Oncidium. It's Masai Red. It's one of the mass-produced things that you can buy in the supermarkets and garden centres and things like that. But very, very nice flower. Comes in quite a few varieties under the same name though. Some of them have got a red lip with virtually no markings at all. But the classic trait is those deep maroon petals and sepals with the slight banding on in a slightly lesser red. Very poor spike on this one for me this year, but then it did get repotted and hacked about a bit before it was put in a pot. The 2 spikes it produced last year got entered into our spring show and won me a first in the Oncidium class. I don't even think this year it would get a look in, so it's staying at home. And again, tagged on the end, really for contrast, this is Dendrobium moniliform variegata, hence the lovely variation on the leaves, which is quite pretty. This again is a sort of semi-deciduous cane Dendrobium, but you need to do your research. This one is more like Dendrobium Victoria Reginae, which basically looks very similar to many of the other cane Dendrobiums and would imply its typical winter rest type, but it's not. This one actually likes to stay warm. It doesn't like getting cold, and in addition to that, it should be watered throughout the year. Less in winter, obviously, because it's not growing as fast, but again, look at the new growth. It's the middle of January. There's new canes firing up all over the place. So again, I don't rest this one, and my Victoria Reginae also doesn't get rested. But if you do your research, you actually find out that that's basically how these should be treated. But just on appearance, they look almost identical to the winter rest type. Unless you do your homework, you'd never know. Cheers then, that's all for today.